These are the initial notes from the use case presented aside, my notes interpreted from those. In the first place, we were given $1,200 to build a computer to replace an existing computer. Plus, we were asked to make this build usable for 10 years. And we previewed the workspace location. This gave us the following. 1. Leave room for simple future upgrades, namely CPU, RAM, GPU, and hard disks. 2. We have an existing monitor, keyboard, and mouse. 3. From the location we derived that the airflow would not be able to pass on the right side. Next will be key deliberations along with an aha moment of realization where the solution arose to build a bona fide AMD 5 system in this budget, ensuring this system's longevity is maximized. Here are the components that we arrived upon in video 1. Yeah, except the PC case. Grok moved that somewhere and we don't know why. Before we begin the build, we will fill you in on details on exactly how these parts were chosen. Let's take this over to the big screen. Power on, begin slideshow. Can I start off? Before we get to the build, real quick, I wish to elaborate on how we chose the CPU, the motherboard. Plus, I want to share the 2 key AI chat prompts, question that played the greatest part on components selected for this build. I want you to know how we got from here to there. In case you were wondering,
I got it from Lydia 3. Yeah, I pray. Oh my.
first we decide whether to use an AMD or an Intel for our PC. Historically, AMD has a better reputation of not socket hopping. True. Plus, Intel has announced a socket change for the end of 2026. Okay, AMD it is. Next question, can we even afford the AM5? This would be ideal. We cannot make this price point with a respectable GPU. Aha, I've got it. We go old school. Do you mean integrated graphics? That's genius. Bring up the internet and ask Grok. I am deciding between a Ryzen 5, a 7, or a 9. The 5s may not last long enough, and the 9s are beyond my budget. So, my questions to you are, which AM5 Ryzen 7 CPU has the best integrated graphics? How much is it? And how does it equivalate in terms of GPUs available 2 GB, 4 GB, 8 GB, or what?
On the AM5 socket, the Ryzen 7 with the best integrated graphics right now is the Ryzen 7 8700G in retail. Price-wise, it's hovering around $270 to $280 today. As for how the 780M stacks up, it punches like a 2 GB to 4 GB discrete card. For your needs, the 8700G gives you future-proof AM5 longevity without a GPU right away. Way better than a plain Ryzen 5's weak Vega iGPU. If budget's tight, grab it now.
Next, one more key question that we used to choose components during our research phase of the choosing components. Video 1 of this series was this. Which AM5 motherboard chipsets accommodate Gen 5 NVMe SSDs? How were you able to preview the computer location? Did you go over there? No, we did FaceTime. I have a way with words. Watch this. Hi, let's share screens. I'll show you what I made. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. What do you think? Let's call the irate.
Here are a few select tips to keep in mind as we begin. Use rubber gloves when handling items that cost a lot of money. Static electricity can do damage to electrical components. That is why I use the kind that grip well, like the kind that auto mechanics use. I also use a Lazy Susan so that I can spin the PC case around rather than walking from one side to the other 100 times. For your first builds, I suggest using labels to tag the cables and cords. Never use zip ties for securing wires. Download the motherboard documentation PDF file and stage it on a tablet. Ensure that you have other resources available and then start the build. This is the case we chose. RAID Max has been around forever. This model, the V217, has real glass on the side. The colored fans are pre-wired, and there's a button on the top of the case to change the color schemes. Here are some pictures of our case. The bottom left picture is the top panel. The top left picture is underneath the buttons to the top panel. In the center, we have the back of the case. On the top right, we have the case as it opens out of the box. And on the bottom right, that's where we'll be placing the motherboard.
We pulled down a list of cables from Grok. That is what you see here in this picture. Most of these cables just string down from the top panel just behind the motherboard case. Anyway, the idea is to identify these cables and then we proceed to the next step. I used envelope labels to identify each panel cable which comes from the top on this RaidMax PC case. That's a great idea. How did you keep them straight? Yeah, show us. I wrote on the sticky side of those gold labels you see here and put the cable ends on them. Smart. That will keep everything organized. Good idea.
This is the last slide from section 2. Stick a fork in that section, ladies, because it's done. While we are labeling, let's familiarize ourselves with and label the PSU cables. We have 8 cables that came with our Sama PSU. We'll be using about half of these cables, 4 or 5, and the rest will go in the box, labeled with saran wrap around it. We're going to use definitely number 1, the big motherboard cable that goes on the right side center. Number 2 also connects to the motherboard. It goes on the top left. That is one to watch, because it tucks in near the motherboard header. We'll certainly use number 8, the power, case to the wall. We're going to not use cables 4 and 5, because this PC is not going to be outfitted with a GPU, no graphics card, and we'll be using a SATA. And there's our layout on PSU cables. We're just about done planning. This last slide is to identify the PSU cables. Top and left, you can see that this is a modular unit. We plug in only what we need for now. This slide overall makes it easy to visualize the plan. On the top right is a preview of just where inside the case this PSU will be spending the next 10 years of its life. The bottom right are all 8 cables in view. Usually I install the PSU first on a build. But this time, the first component in the box will be a secondary hard drive. Here's why.
We noticed that on this RaidMax case, there was extra place for a hard drive, so we decided to use that right away for the secondary drive. This leaves the customer an easier upgrade later for adding a third and even a fourth drive. We want one here. The catch was that only a 2.5-inch hard drive would fit here, and those are hard to find. We went to Micro Center, we went to Newegg, neither even have a filter for 2.5. We really had to have a 2.5, so we decided to shuck one. Oddly enough, the externals are actually cheaper. Pictured here is the external hard drive we bought, top and left. The bottom picture is of the shucked drive. There we only have to peel off the tape and disconnect the converter head. Note that not every external hard drive brand is easy to take apart like this. Do your research in advance and choose the right one. These pictures here show you the box open, then shucked. And on the bottom left, you can see the beginning of where we're cutting the side. It opened like a tuna can, as you can see from the bottom middle image. In the right 2 pictures, you can see the installed drive. It goes right underneath, the motherboard tucks away nicely. It is easier to install this SATA drive here before the motherboard is placed. Plus, we wanted to do this first in case there were any issues so that we could make other plans if need be.
Now we install the power supply unit. Who wants to turn the 4 screws? This PSU and this case comply with modern-day standards in that the screws locations allow it to orient but one way. The words we use in Japan are poka-yoke, which means error-proof. Be sure to use the screws that come with it. These screws differ from others. This installed PSU fit perfectly into a compartmentalized chamber on the bottom and rear side of this case. To me, nothing says I love you with more clarity than a fast SSD. Watch this.
As we were shopping for SSD drives, we noticed that PNY had just released an SSD drive that is presently the fastest one on earth. We decided to source one for this build. As new products are released, they're constantly benchmarked and rated. This one will not be number 1 forever. That goes without saying. But by using this one now, it does lend itself towards our goal of future-proofing the build. Definitely consult your motherboard documentation as to where and how to install the SSD drive. Also check it for optimum compatibility / specifications. This one is a 1TB 5x4. You may notice that we installed this SSD drive into the motherboard before we put the motherboard in the case. And next we will be doing the same thing with the CPU.
This is our project CPU build slide. While you're looking at the pictures, I can let you know that after the CPU is in the socket, it will take a little more pressure to lever that down than is expected. Then that little black cap flies off. This is normal. This CPU socket cover needs to be retained in case you ever need to RMA the CPU. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to find a way to double check how the CPU was dropped in there before you down the CPU socket lever. I find it frequent that I second guess myself after the fact. Did I put that CPU into the socket in the correct orientation? So what I've learned to do is to get a fingernail polish brush and apply just a little bit of thermal paste on the triangle corner. This extra action puts it in my brain that yes, it is oriented correctly. Plus, it gives me more visibility. The triangle that you are supposed to use is so subtle you can barely see it. And it really wants to be in there correct. Next, be steady and accurate on that drop. Alright, this is tip number 3. Modern sockets are zero insertion force. The CPU will drop right into place using just gravity. See that? It just falls in. If you feel any resistance, stop and double check the alignment to avoid damage.
Line up the triangle, gently lower it in, and snap the lever down.
The picture on the left demonstrates our opportunity now to visually plan things ahead. Here we do nothing more than lightly tie things off, plus to decide which cables and wires will go through which holes or be tied off on what side or underneath. This wiring look-see is like a rough draft, if you will. The picture on the right shows the case laid to the side, ready for the motherboard. We have our low voltage cables pulled in the northwest part by the motherboard header. The next video will take you through the motherboard installation to the completion of the build PC. Pre-motherboard, always plan ahead, identify cables and wires, and install small components while it's easier. That concludes our pre-mobile video 2 of the series, PC Builders Bootcamp.